Welcome to PSEG True Diversity film series, Standing in Solidarity. My name is Donna Walker-Kuhn. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Senior Advisor of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. This evening, we are pleased to host a very important topic, affordable housing crisis. Our discussion this evening will center on New Jersey's crisis for new homes. What are the solutions to increasing affordability and efforts we as citizens can take to support this challenge? This discussion is also informed by the documentary Poverty, Politics, and Profit, and the link was included in your RSVP. This social justice series is part of our Standing in Solidarity initiative. The purpose of the series is to bring our community together and to encourage everyone to take part in the movement to ensure civil rights for all. On our website, you can find archived prior social justice panel discussions, as well as resources that will help you take action. We also are happy to have as our advisors the Newark NAACP, New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, Newark Arts, the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center at Rutgers University, Newark, the Africana Institute at Essex County College, Asian American Arts Alliance, and ACLU, New Jersey. Now, NJPAC would like to offer a land acknowledgement. The language we're using was created with consultation and guidance from Chief Dwayne Perry of the Rampopo Lenape Munsee tribe and Oleana Whispering Dove of the Eastern Salagi Algonquin descendants. We're grateful to them for their generosity, wisdom, and labor to craft these words. We the Lenape, original benefactors of land once ripened and cultivated with attentiveness to the Creator and her ascendancy, express everlasting gratitude to our Creator for the traditional ancestral jurisdictions of the Munsee, Esopus, Canarsie, Capsee, Ripawes, Silanoy, and Weekasqueak, jointly known today as the Rampopo and Nanticoke Lene Lenape. Let this, our land acknowledgement, be the beginning of our return to unity. Let us be guardians of the water, the air, the earth, the four-legged, the flyers, the swimmers, the crawlers, the mammal people, and the green. Let us now stand lifting our humanity, enrapturing with Earth's consciousness as guardians of harmony and kindness. I would also like to thank our corporate sponsor. Since 2014, PSEG and the PSEG Foundation have partnered with NJPAC to pair screenings of socially engaged films with thoughtful talks featuring activists, artists, academics, journalists, and other experts. Now, please welcome our moderator for this evening's panel, Linda McDonald Carter, an attorney, educator, and advocate who grew up in the Scudder Housing Project in Newark Central Ward. Linda has been a real estate lawyer for over 25 years and was formerly an associate professor of paralegal studies, political studies, and criminal justice, as well as director of the paralegal studies program at Essex College. Linda is very active in her community, lending her expertise as a panelist and moderator for a number of institutions, as well as civic organizations. Thank you so much, Linda, and welcome.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Hold on one second. Okay, hi. Thank you, Donna. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. So before we get started, I just want everyone to know that we're missing two panelists, but the show must go on. Nonetheless, we have two inspiring and well-versed individuals, Julia Orlando and also Luis, hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, or he'll get me, but Hulero, but he'll correct me if I was wrong. Anyway, so, as Donna said, I actually grew up in public housing in the old Third Ward in Newark Central Ward when the last housing project was built. And so, to give some context, it's really interesting for me, and I'm so happy to do this because the whole idea of affordable housing didn't exist when I grew up in the projects. And it's interesting because there's a transition from public housing to affordable housing. And it's my position that they both serve different purposes. Just to give you a little bit, because public housing has gotten bad rap. And so I feel that, I was fortunate enough to be around to be able to talk about the benefits of public housing. First of all, before we get to the Reagan administration, because that's where we begin to commodify housing. But when we first moved into Scudder Homes, which was the last new public housing built, what happened is that the housing authority dispatched individuals to come to our house to see how my parents were raising us and to see how clean we were. And even when we moved into public housing, everyone on the floor was responsible for scrubbing and waxing the hallway floors and wiping down the walls, except for the senior citizen. And then later on, a lot of things changed in the community. You had the heroin and later the crack. And, unfortunately, individuals, we say now that they have medical problems. We didn't say that before. We said they had basically character defects. But what ultimately happened is that it appears that because of the conditions of pulling away people for the facilities, the funding started getting cut. People were pulling away the funding. We no longer had the facilities people or the number that we needed. Granted, we were responsible for our own area like once or twice a year. But, things really changed. And I think that I recognize what happened is that as individuals in the community who lived in public housing, against their interests, they felt it were the buildings that were causing the problem. It wasn't the buildings, it was social matters that were contributing to the condition of the buildings, but people ignored that. I still live in the same community. I live exactly 2 blocks down from where I grew up. So, and I've watched this. I've watched public housing move to affordable housing. I watched where we paid 25% of whatever the income was in the household to 33% by the time we get to the Reagan administration. And then later on, a new concept in public housing from the high rises to the low rises. And then later on, affordable housing, and then some of the challenges that came. And as we go on, and Julia and Luis will introduce themselves. And, those of you who look back at you looked at the film, hopefully everybody did. 2 things that they don't talk about. They don't talk about the Veterans Administration or the veterans loans, so people can get loans. And they don't talk about Levittown. And interesting, these are 2 situations where people were given the money to buy a house, right? They were given the money, low interest loans that were funded and subsidized by the American public. And one would argue that, it's my position that those are good examples as we go and move through the questions that we have. Those are good examples of what we could be doing today in 2025. So on that note, having given you a little background about me, I'm going to introduce Julia Orlando, who will tell you about herself. And then we'll move to Luis. Julia?
Good evening. Good evening, Linda. Thank you so much and welcome everyone. So a little bit about me. I have been in my career for 36 years. This is my 36th year. I spent 20 years in New York City designing and operating supportive housing projects, specifically for folks with serious mental illness, some of the projects also for persons with substance use disorder, and also criminal justice involvement. For 15 years, I was the director of the Bergen County Housing, Health, and Human Services Center in Hackensack, New Jersey. This was a shared services agreement between the County of Bergen and also the Housing Authority of Bergen County. And this innovative one-stop model contained a housing-focused shelter, a housing-first approach to move folks out of shelter quickly through collaboration of community providers. We were the first community in the nation to reach functional zero for chronic homelessness. We were also the first community in New Jersey, the 28th in the nation, to reach functional zero for veterans. So we became known as a double zero community. And through that success, I've had the pleasure and the privilege to be a consultant, and I've been working with communities across the nation in their efforts to work towards reaching functional zero, which, as all of you know, is extremely challenging. And it doesn't happen without housing. It's not enough to put people in shelter. We have to be able to get them safely into shelter, but move them into housing very quickly. And lastly, I've had the incredible joy of spending the past year as serving in the capacity as Vice President for Integrative Services at Bergen Newbridge Medical Center, which is our state of New Jersey's largest hospital. And my work at the hospital has been to focus on addressing social determinants of health, which include food insecurity and housing insecurity and transportation and all of these things that our community members need to be healthy and successful in their lives. In addition to that, I'm working very hard to make sure that behavioral health and substance use is also integrated into our medical care, making sure that our service lines are addressing the whole person and understanding that if people are not well in their lives, if they have barriers, it's going to play out too in their medical care. So for me as a professional, spending 35 years thinking, I wish I had more input onto the healthcare side. I wish we could work better together. I now have the privilege and the excitement to do that, especially under the leadership of our CEO, Deb Visconti, who really embraces that understanding of we need to really serve the whole person and beyond the walls of the hospital. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Luis.
Thank you.
Hi, Louise.
Hi, Linda and Julia. How are you?
Wait,
hello
I
to
just
all
want to tell you, I have your name now, Eulario. Did I get it?
You got it. You got it the first time, but
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Hey, listen, I appreciate that, Linda. Of course, just a privilege to be here, and just hello to all the participants of this great event that we have here. Just a little bit about myself. Born and raised in the city of Newark. I have over 15 years of experience in government and nonprofit, leading housing and homelessness programs and initiatives. I was the former director of the New Jersey Housing Collaborative, which was and still is, a statewide housing initiative formed in 2017 by the New Jersey Department of Health to address homelessness in impacted communities across New Jersey. Previously, I managed various supportive housing programs in Newark as a director of housing for the AIDS Resource Foundation for Children, and also led several housing initiatives and programs during my tenure at the Newark Housing Authority. And currently, I have the privilege and honor of being the director of the city's Office of Homeless Services, appointed by the great Mayor Baraka in 2022. I oversee the office, its programs and activities, and lead the city's projects and initiatives that aim really to end chronic homelessness in our city. In early 2023, the office, under the direction of the mayor, launched the city's first homelessness strategic plan. Very proud of this plan. It serves as our blueprint in our city. The plan itself was developed with support from consumers, community partners, business leaders, and stakeholders, and focuses on key strategies that will reduce street homelessness, improve the shelter system, and of course, expand housing. And I'm really, really proud to say that since the launch of the plan, we have introduced several innovative and comprehensive strategies that really have helped us reduce the unsheltered population since the plan's launch in 2022. And we're just getting started. We have, the mayor has plenty more in store for 2025. We are working on several initiatives and projects that I'll touch on during our call here. But thank you again for having me, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Linda?
Should
Linda, we can't hear you or see you.
Luis, you're getting really nice shout outs in our chat.
Yeah, I took a opportunity to say hi to Fakira Bradley. Hey.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
back.
He's back. All
I'm
right.
back. We had some technical challenge. Okay, so I'm back. So listen, I have like a bunch of questions that I know you two will do fabulously at. Let's start with, well, I gave a little insight in terms of my experience to give people some context in terms of the significance of public housing and the fact that there were some solutions that existed years ago. And hopefully we can come back to in terms of the Veterans Administration in Levittown and a host of other communities like that throughout the country. But we're going to go directly to affordable housing, and then maybe we'll come back at the end. So each panelist has given us background in respective agencies and how they are and have been involved in addressing homeless crises in New Jersey. So what have been your biggest challenges, Julia, if you don't mind me using your first name,
Sure.
for
So,
affordable housing initiatives? I'm sorry,
what,
for affordable housing.
no, it's okay. I'm actually, wearing two hats. I think for those people who watched the video was so impactful, and I truly empathized with the two women who were lucky enough to get a voucher. So to get a Section 8 voucher is really, when they say winning the lottery, it really is like winning the lottery. And to see them then not be able to obtain housing and have to
Mm.
lose that voucher and go back on a waiting list. I've had that experience with folks. And one of the things that has been really helpful in my experience working with the Wonderful Housing Authority is that over time, I think now people have more time. I think people need to have more time in their housing search. So it's very difficult. 90 days to find it, to secure it is extremely difficult. So finding landlords that will accept vouchers, I think is a challenge everywhere that I've spoken, that I've done consultation work. I think it's really important to cultivate relationships with landlords. And I think that in our program in Bergen, we were exceptionally good at that. Care Plus New Jersey did a lot of the housing search and developed relationships with landlords where they knew if they had trouble, they had a phone number, they could call somebody. They were willing to work together. And I just think that that's so important when we're working, especially with a population, with a homeless population of folks. So that's been a challenge. I also know I was on the board of Habitat for Humanity here in Bergen County, and there was a lot of NIMBYism. There was a lot of, we don't want this, a lot of misunderstanding about really what it is. What is affordable housing? What is Habitat for Humanity? What is special needs housing? And so communities are usually fearful because they don't know. And so making sure that we do education, that I realized that being in my community, I had to be part of the groups here that were trying to move those things forward. Because being on the board of Habitat for Humanity on family selection, to hear the stories of these hardworking families and how much they were struggling, and you know what, they want the same thing for their kids that we all want for our kids, and just the way they talked about trick-or-treating and it not being safe. And it really brought it home for me, made it really, it made me really want to do something about that issue. So I think the challenges with landlords, the challenges with community, with getting approvals. And then I think it's very important too that when people have vouchers, that we have housing search. That's such an important part. It's not enough just to have a voucher in your hand. A lot of people have disabilities, they can't get around. They might need someone to take them. People need assistance with finding places that actually have availability. That's a very, very difficult thing for people to do on their own. So that's just a little bit of some of the challenges that I have had.
Let me ask you, because someone just sent a question in terms of the payments for landlords. And one of my questions is going to be, and Luis, I wanted you to answer this too, in addition to the primary question. is there any efforts to engage in, I know when in public housing, there was tenant selection, right? And something similar to what you're talking about in terms of relationships with landlords, to let them feel comfortable about the fact that once you're in this program, there has been a selection process that can help. And maybe in terms of enhancing the payment, what would the payment increase in payments make a difference?
I'm actually gonna let Luis, because he worked in a housing authority, so maybe
Okay.
he can answer that better than I can, because I know that there are incentivized programs, but it does differ based on the the assistance and also by the housing authorities. So I'll let Luis answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, Linda. So I guess I'll tackle the question first, and then I can follow up with
That's fine.
that question. First, I'll say that housing subsidies are critical, right, and help families and communities close that affordability gap, right, that we see in our communities, whether it's public housing, Section 8 vouchers, or workforce housing, which we call affordable housing. We know that these models work, right, and help stabilize our community. So we do need more. If we need to advocate for our federal partners and agencies, really to meet the needs that we are seeing in our city, right? Because although we do have these programs in our community and in our cities, they're just not meeting the need, right? So that's something that we, as municipalities or partners or providers, we have to advocate for more of those subsidies, because we know that they are critical really in stabilizing our families and residents and especially our vulnerable families. The challenges for affordable housing is not unique to our city here or to New Jersey, right? It's nationally, it's production, right? We need to build more. It's no different here in Newark, but it's also very complicated, right? There's many factors involved. There's many levers you got to pull. But we're really proud to say that our mayor has been laser focused on this issue and has been working tirelessly really to develop a pipeline of affordable housing and implementing the tools, right, that's going to help us get there, right? For example, creating the Office of Affordable Housing, right? This office leads the mayor's initiative to create and preserve affordable housing in the city, passing the inclusionary zoning ordinance, which ties the creation of affordable housing to the construction of market rate housing. That's happening. And as a matter of fact, the mayor is, giving access to our residents as first dibs, right? It's something that, he definitely wanted to emphasize for that program. Creating the first land bank in New Jersey, which is now, making home ownership affordable in our city. And it's another successful initiative that the mayor is leading. And then finally, introducing, zoning changes that in our city, is going to encourage more housing. So there's so many things you can do, right? It's really a complicated, kind of puzzle. But really proud to say that our mayor has been really ahead of this and has been doing a lot of amazing things in our city. And also is really thinking of outside of the box, right? What solutions can we come up with? There are groundbreaking, right? That can kind of, get us closer to what we need to be. And, we want to, I'm just happy to say that in December, the mayor launched the Path Home program. It's a partnership with the Newark Housing Authority. And essentially, we're investing in renovating and furnishing vacant public housing units, activating them, and designating them for chronically homeless residents. We're really excited about this program. We have designated over 200 units of public housing. The first cohort of individuals moved in at the end of December, and we have more scheduled for March. So as you can see, there's so many things, right, that we are doing here in Newark, and that's important. Doing is important, right? Getting ahead of this, and the mayor has been doing that. And thinking outside of the box, looking at all the tools and all the levers that are at your disposal to really make a difference. And we're really excited about what's happening here in Newark and looking forward to what we have, in the pipeline.
Okay. Well, we've been joined. One of our guests, one of our panelists that wasn't able to come initially is now available. Amir Khan. Amir, you want to come on and you want to talk about, kind of catch up, but that's okay. We want you to talk about a little bit about what you do and your contributions to the whole area of homelessness in the crisis in New Jersey, and then, tell people about yourself for a few. And I would add, since this is where we are right now, to speak to the biggest challenges that you are experiencing or familiar with.
Well,
Amir?
great. Well, yes. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome everyone. I apologize about being a little late on the call today. It ended up being the same day Governor had the Black History celebration at the governor's mansion, and just left there. But I'm here, so glad to be able to be on this call and talk. And just real briefly, my name's Pastor Amir Khan. We head up New Beginnings Behavioral Health. We have 3 recovery homes in Camden, along with a 48-acre facility down in Millville, New Jersey. In Camden, we work with people getting them off the streets, out of prison, those dealing with addiction. We have a 38-foot motorhome. We took the beds out in the back. We have 3 showers and a washer and dryer. Deal with people that have needs, let them take showers, wash their clothes, feel good about themselves, connect them with services. Over the past 3-4 years, the amount of deaths to fentanyl, since that hit the streets, it's been terrible. So we knew we had to get some kind of larger facility that would take people immediately. And that's where we really started working hard on a facility. We obtained this facility about 3 or 4 years ago now. It's a beautiful 48-acre facility with a river, boating and fishing, and Olympic-sized pool, volleyball, tennis, miniature golf, dormitory that can hold about 125, commercial kitchen, dining hall, rec center with gym, library, all of that. But imagine people coming out of prison, nowhere to live, in which about 50% of those coming out of prison need somewhere to live. Or if not, they go into homelessness. Those deal with addiction, those dealing with any kind of challenges, even mental issues, homelessness, we've been dealing with that. So we're able to take people out, put them either at one of the 3 homes in Camden, which can hold up to about 60 men there, and another 125 down in Millville. That's a little background about who we are, what we do. It's the 3-legged stool, which is 1, roof over their head, food, clothing, transportation. 2nd leg of that stool is helping them counseling. Average person literally receives on the average 15 to 20 hours per week on IOP and OP. We give medical assisted treatment as well. And then the final phase, which ties more into the group tonight, is getting them transition to go back into society. So our biggest challenge in the past has been, where do they go? New Jersey it's so expensive to live here, and you're dealing with 200,000 plus deficit with housing. So what do we do? So some of the things we do, especially when we know we don't want to trigger them, then go back to the same situation. We don't want to set up a utopia where they come in, they stay for a whole year there. This is great. We don't charge them a penny, whether they have insurance or not. We want them to focus 100% on recovery. And this is something that has affected all of our families. So we don't want them then graduate them, kick them back out in the streets, then they're back homeless again, back on drugs or back in jail. So some of the main things we work on now is work with shared living, where, we're giving them hope. We tell them, listen, start off. You can't afford to come out and get a job netting $2,000 a month, and your rent's $2,000 a month, so start off in shared living, where maybe 6, 7 people can be in the house together. Each person might be paying $600, $700, $800 a month. You can afford that while you're saving up money. We work on a financial literacy course, get their credit cleaned up. After 2 years of bank statements, then we can get them mortgages. So now we teach them about, let your mind go towards a duplex, a triplex, quadplex, where you live in one section, you rent out the others, and now all of a sudden you're moving into home ownership. So our role, especially in this kind of setting, is helping individuals move from literally homelessness to a shared living concept, to a facility like ours, to shared living, to home ownership. We're so excited. I think a guy's getting ready to go to settlement, I think in May or May or June, and he's getting, I think it's a duplex in Pennsauken, but he's able to get it for $375. There's a program through DCA. They can work because he's a first-time home buyer, which I don't know if it was said already, but remember, first-time home buyer is not quote unquote first-time home buyer. It's if you haven't bought a home that you're gonna live in for the past 3 years. So these guys all qualify for that first-time home buyer, receiving money towards their down payment and their closing costs of up to 25,000 each. Literally no money coming out of their pocket. We have one guy that bought a home and it cost them, I think, $450 or $500 total out of pocket. So it's possible. We just got to be creative, think outside the box, and transform lives.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khan. I really appreciate it. So I know we have about 9 questions, so I'm going to ask the panelists to check out the questions and see if you can kind of fold some of the answers into your answers to the questions, if that's possible. Okay. So I want to go back to Luis, if that's okay, regarding your thoughts on housing first policies, and then I'm going to go to Julia, and then I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Khan, if that's okay. Is that all right?
No problem at all. Yep.
All right. So Luis, you
Yeah.
want to talk about, share your thoughts on implementing housing first policies in New Jersey?
Yeah, no, housing first is a really important, philosophy, right? It really means is that someone, cannot address, a lot of their either medical or behavioral health conditions if they don't have stability in their lives, right? Whether it's a bed, whether it's a room, or whether it's their own apartment, they aren't really able to kind of address all these things if they don't have a place to stay. And I think that it's not just for, someone that's experiencing homelessness, it's for all of us, right? We go home at the end of the
Yes.
day, right, for peace, for love, for support, right? It's where we go when we're beaten up by the world, and we were able to close that door behind us, and whether it's a pet or a family member, or maybe it's just you, right? You have a space where you go to really think about and reflect on the day. Unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that, or far too many folks that don't have that ability. So housing first is giving them that space, giving them that bed first before we tackle, all these other challenges that we know are going to take some time, right? And it's going to take some patience, and it's going to take some support. Something that we're really focused on is, street outreach services in the city of Newark, right? Engaging folks across the city that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness, and our street outreach workers go out there and develop these important relationships with these individuals to before we start talking about offering services, because we know that a lot of them are either traumatized by some of the experiences that they've had. So in order really to take the next step, right, whether it's in their service or housing plan, we have to develop a relationship first. We got to gain their trust to have a conversation. So housing first is something that we've adopted here in the city of Newark, that we have, that our partners also have done as well. We have some incredible street outreach, organizations such as Bridges Outreach and, CSP&J, who have partnered with us to expand the critical work that we do on the ground. But if we didn't believe in housing first, we really will go nowhere, right? Because we have to understand that we have to bring our people in and wrap them around with services, but also support before they can, really rebuild their lives. One of the success stories that I, from really early on was, we brought someone in and she didn't, go to her first medical appointment a year later once she was stabilized. And although that, our goal is to connect them to more permanent housing, but the fact that she went to a medical appointment for the first time in many years tells us that her priority wasn't her health. Unfortunately, it was her surviving on our streets. Thinking about the next meal or thinking about a safe place to sleep. Of course, they're not going to think about their health, and once we brought them in and stabilized them and gave them a safe place, that's when they were able to open up their bandwidth and start thinking about all these other things that they have neglected for many years because it just, they weren't really had a stable place to stay. So, housing first is the only way. It's the only way we're going to make a difference. It's something that we've adopted here in our city, that our partners have as well. And I think it's critical in addressing homelessness, and, across the board.
Okay, Julia, do you have anything you want to add? But before you add, and we get to the next question, there's a concern from Tasha. And I just want Tasha to know that we're going to address the working poor in my next question. So we're not leaving you out. So Julia, anything you want to add?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things that Sam Simbaris talks about, and for those of you who know who Sam is, he's the godfather, right, of Housing First. He's the person who brought it to New York City very early in my career. It was controversial then. It's controversial now. I think it's going to become more controversial. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people don't really understand it in terms of what it is and what it's not. When people say they're doing housing first and they stick somebody in an apartment and they don't do any, case management, no wraparound services, and then it fails, and then they say it fails, it doesn't work, because that's not housing first. And I think there's a lot of that goes on where, people are not doing it really correctly. So it's important to have fidelity and to understand that what Sam talks about is housing is the beginning. It is not the end. I think a lot of providers look at, we just get people into housing and then we're done, right? We're good. And that is so incorrect. The person's life really doesn't really start. The roads to recovery, right? The roads to better healthcare, the roads to better social integration, all of those things don't come until a person's housed. And so I know for us in Bergen County, the platform, we adopted Housing First early on from 2009 when we opened. We received a lot of backlash in our own community, a lot of people saying it's not going to work, people saying that it's irresponsible and it's going to fail. I have to say, though, after housing, thousands of people over a 15-year period, many of them were housing first. And had we not done that, we would not have housed them. I think this idea that people have to earn housing is deeply problematic, because I see housing as healthcare. I see housing as a human right. And if we look at it where we have expectations, and Linda, you really touched on that when you talked about people coming in and seeing how, your apartment. And I think, like, there are days I wouldn't want anybody walking in my own, judging me and saying, well, you don't deserve to live in a house because you haven't done your dishes today. So I think there's a lot of things that trouble me about that, but also this misconception. Housing first works. It's an evidence-based, model. We know that it works, and we know, and I know Luis knows, that there are people that if we don't use this model, they will not come off the street. They will not be successful in housing. And there's a second piece to this, and this really, I'll leave it here. It doesn't mean that sometimes it doesn't fail. I have had people go to housing, it doesn't work out, they come back, and we do something different, and we learn. It's okay for people to fail. People will fail. And it doesn't mean that the model fails. It means that people have challenges, and people can go into apartments and then all their friends decide they're going to live in the apartment, right? And it's a really lovely person and they don't know how to tell their friends to leave. They lose the apartment. So a lot of understanding this work is it's not just one and done and we move on. It's that we continue to work with people even when we house them, making sure that they stay housing. And, I know Amir, I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but that's it. This is really about us helping people in their evolution and as they go into the community, because they're going to encounter problems and we can help them stay in housing. When people have these vouchers, these subsidies, we don't want them to lose them, but it's going to take a lot of support and a lot of care from people working with them to make sure that they can be successful within their housing.
Okay. And Amir, you're doing some of this work, so you want to give your insight having to do with housing first policies for a few, and then we're going to move to the hot topic, the working poor.
Yep. I agree 1,000% with what Julie was just talking about. They're all different kind of models. I don't knock any of them that are out there because each one adds something to the solution. With us, the mental issues dealing with getting this and this together is so important. So with us, we do it all together at one time. When a person comes in from the very beginning, yes, they get housing, but it's not housing first. It's housing, it's treatment, and all that at the same time. Now, and housing first is a great model because there's some people that won't come to us. They don't want to go in treatment. So if they come and they first go into housing first, get settled, then they get into treatment, it works. And not everyone, they've got their horror stories, and so do we. I mean, we started out going completely housing first, let them get situated, settled. But we had our horror stories as well. The one I remember a guy, because veterans, when the homeless come in, vets can kind of go right to the top of the list. And we had this guy, he was so proud. I still have a picture on my phone to this day. His name is Marvin. I'll never forget him. He has his key, and going into his place fully furnished, he was so excited. Homelessness, dealing with incarceration and addiction for years, and finally got his own place. And he was in there doing really well. The washer and dryer is downstairs, and several apartments share that washer and dryer. He had to go to the bathroom. And instead of going back up to his apartment and going to the bathroom, his mindset was, nobody's looking, even though there's cameras down there. Let me pull down my pants and go to the bathroom right here. Boom. Needless to say, they had it on camera. We get a phone call the next day, come and get him. So we personally, this is what we do. We take our individuals, we bring them in, we do an assessment right in the beginning, and then they know that they're going right into counseling. And I know Julie does the same thing as well. But we get them a house, clothing, so forth and so on, and they're able to stay for up to a year while we work with them. But on our end, they have to be willing to volunteer hours. They have to be willing to go through counseling. They have to be willing to see doctors. We get them eating right, get them on the right medication, and their lives are totally changed. I mean, right now I have a new policy. We want to take a picture when they first come in, because I tell them 60, 90 days, you won't recognize yourself. So we're all for the housing first model as well. We just try to make sure that we get the counseling and the therapy in from day one as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, the next question has to do with the working poor. And, just to go back for a second, as I was looking at the question I'm about to ask, that's where I grew up. We were working poor, but working poor only paid 25% of whatever their income was, right? To live in public housing in the 1960s. And then later it became 33% of whatever the income was in your home. And on that note, I want to start with Luis. If we can first describe the working poor, and I say that because the income is not necessarily a good measure based on, how much housing costs. So if you can describe what you think, or, from your experience, what the working poor is, and then talk about the kinds of resources that are available to accommodate working individuals, particularly single parents who may earn too much for state aid, but still cannot make ends meet. So I'm going to start with Luis, and then come back to Julia, and then come to you, Mr. Khan.
All right.
Great. Well, one thing that I was reflecting on when this question came up was that I didn't know that I was I didn't know I was poor until I grew up. I became an adult. But we were absolutely poor, right? We lived in Newark. We shared a 2-bedroom apartment. It was a whole bunch of us in that apartment. I remember, my mother applying for food stamps. My father was a taxi driver. My mom worked in a factory. But you know what? We were rich in just love. And I felt, although it's a cramped apartment, immediately when I walked in, I felt that warmth, right? And as a child and as someone as part of this family, that meant a lot to me. So I didn't know we were poor until I grew up, because we had such a really healthy and loving household. But we struggled. Yes. We didn't have access to everything. And, I'm sure my parents didn't talk about their finances to me, with me, but, we absolutely struggled as a family. And we didn't have everything at all times, right? There was always something lacking. And I still remember my parents' rent, right? It was $600 for a two-bedroom apartment. I don't know why that's still stuck in my head. But that tells you how long ago that was, right? A two-bedroom was absolutely not 600 unless it's subsidized. But for families that are working, right, that are having a hard time kind of closing that affordability gap, right, is what we're talking about, right, of what the costs are and what your income is, right? And as we know, costs are higher now and have not caught up, and our incomes have not caught up. And that's like system wide, right? That's across the United States, not unique here to the city. Um, but fortunately, there are resources, right, for folks that are identified as working poor, right? One thing that I saw in the chat, which, we have some we have also experts in the chat, by the way, Linda, so
Mhm.
we may want to ask them some questions too. But I saw someone talk about, right, workforce housing, affordable housing, and someone mentioning that, there is housing at 60% of the AMI, which is the area median income. So workforce housing, which is, subsidized through, believe it or not, the IRS. They issue tax credits to developers, right? So to make sure that, they're building more affordable housing, cutting down that cost to make, the rents more affordable compared to what the market is charging. Workforce housing is really critical, and it kind of offers that, and it kind of fills that gap, right, in between market rate and subsidized, because there are folks, and I guess what we're talking about here is folks that won't be eligible for Section 8 or public housing because they often target a lower AMI, right? And then, and then sometimes, the rents that we have now are out of reach, right? So workforce housing absolutely fills that need, and it's something we need to do more of. And, there's plenty of affordable housing that's being developed. I mentioned earlier the efforts of our mayor in developing more affordable housing. Those tax credits are critical to that as well, and other subsidies that can produce more of that housing. Another program that I want to talk about that's been around, actually, it really started around the Obama presidency, is rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing is, funded through what we call ESG, which is Emergency Solutions Grant, which is a federal grant. Essentially, rapid rehousing, what it does is provides short-term rental assistance and services. The goal is really to help someone obtain housing as quickly as possible, or to maintain someone housed, right, by paying for any housing cost or any back rent that's old, or any utilities that are old. But I mean, essentially, this program offers little preconditions, right? And it offers the services and resources that are tailored to someone that can be quickly rehoused. And it's right in the name. It offers housing identification services, rent and move-in assistance, and also, rapid rehousing case management services to make sure that you are stabilized in your home and not in need of, other services. So I'm a big fan of that. We actually have rapid rehousing in our office here. We have, dozens of sub-recipients that provide that program in our community. So it's another resource. The state as well, Department of Community Affairs, also, manages a diversion program, which is super flexible, and is a lot more flexible actually than rapid rehousing. So, there are resources for folks that are sort of in the middle, whether it's workforce housing, I mentioned rapid rehousing, rental assistance. There are resources that can help what we would refer to as the working poor population in our city and in our communities.
Okay, I know we're getting some questions to make sure we include in there single individuals who may also, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a group. It may just be one person,
Correct.
and they may be over 55.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Julia, is anything you want to add? And then Amir? anything you want to add to this?
Sure. And I'm so grateful that Luis talked about rapid rehousing and diversion. So I think one of the things that was really helpful for our model in Bergen County is that we helped the individual. Whatever was going on with that individual, we did a very good assessment, and we really knew in our community who was homeless, who was at risk of homeless, who needed a lot of assistance, like who needed supportive housing, who needed affordable housing, who needed housing with some medical supports, who needed special needs housing because they had autism, right? So you can go down the gamut of what people need and actually help match housing and different housing, because not everybody needs the same thing. And I think it's very important to know in your community who, in what ways we can help people. I think another thing that was really helpful for us with folks that were working and had challenges is we provided a meal every night and every afternoon. So if somebody who was working wanted to come in and grab a free lunch, they did. We didn't ask questions. We didn't ask how much they made, if they could afford. We didn't ask anything. You could come in, grab a lunch 7 days a week. You could come for dinner 7 days a week. And so by providing meals that were actually very good, provided by the community, we were able to also help people make ends meet. We were providing some essential services. If they came in and they were having a tough month and they needed a ShopRite card, if they needed diapers, if they needed something, we always had those things. So it was recognizing that different people need different things. People are struggling in different ways. So if you can design your programs to be nimble and to be able to respond to the different needs, because when I read the chats in the QA, they're firing lots of different questions. And what that tells us is that lots of people need help, and they need help differently. Not everybody's in the same boat. Not everybody's in the same situation. And I think that that's the challenge of working in this space. Lastly, I would say too, Luis, you made a great point. You have some really smart people that are watching this tonight. And somebody brought up ALICE, right? Which is your asset limited, income constrained, employed, right? So even at our medical center, we have staff who are part of ALICE, who are actually working to understand this better and to look at in healthcare, how do we contribute to this, right? How do we make this better? We started a food pantry in the hospital so that when people are leaving, especially people who have diabetes, right? People who indicate to us when they come in the door, I'm having trouble having meals, having food. They're leaving with food, and they're leaving with the list of where to get food and also getting into a database. So I think it's really important that as a community, whether it's Newark, right, or if it's here in Bergen County, that we understand the breadth and the multitude of different places that we can affect a change and we can affect a difference. Lastly, I will also say is employment. It's very, very important that we help people also increase their skills, increase their employabilities to get better jobs, better opportunities. I think that's not something that in shelter or in homeless services we've always looked at. But I think when you're working with people that come into shelter and they can't get a Section 8 and they're not eligible for some things, we also can look at employment. How do we help you with training? What's available at our local colleges? So it's making sure, again, across the gamut, we're creating things for the people that we are serving.
Thank you, Julia. Really appreciate that. Amir, you want to add to this conversation?
Excellent again. And I'm loving this conversation and all the great information. I just want to touch on what Luis mentioned about the diversion program. There's so many great programs like this that are out there. One time I was talking to one of the commissioners, I think it was at DOL. I said, "You got all these great programs. How come people don't know about them?" And they said, "We've got the money that comes down from the state, but we don't have money to promote it, to get out there." So I'm glad groups like this and your organization, we're getting the word out there. Give an example, the diversion program, the Commissioner Suarez, they came up with this great program where they realized after studying, I forgot how many thousands of people or incidents, they realized that if a person has a car and the car breaks down, they also have a job, what do? Do they get their car fixed, or do they pay their rent? You know, if they get their car fixed, now they can go into, you know, losing their place. You know, do I not go, do I quit my job? And they realize that instead of just giving money to help with back rent, the diversion program, they can actually come in and help money towards getting your car fixed, your brakes, whatever it might be. There's a limit, of course, but boy, that's out of the box thinking right there, because they realize it's better to spend $500-600 getting your brakes fixed and keep you working and keep you in a house or an apartment than to, you know, not work or pay the money on your car and lose your house. Now it could cost up to $20,000 for the year. So there's some great programs like that. I really encourage people to really tap into all these different resources. I often use the acronym POOR, POOR. Stands for passing over opportunity regularly. Many times we pass over these opportunities, the doors that are out there for us. There are tons and tons of doors that are out there. And with this new administration, we don't know what's going to be here tomorrow. We have to take advantage of this stuff now while it's available. Knock on every door, fill out every application. You got groups like us and others that will help you with the application. So extremely important. Prime example, Julia mentioned about jobs. I'm real big on job training. Department of Labor, every one of us have a one-stop in our county. And if you want to, you know, now leave that job at Home Depot, at Lowe's, and you want to go into welding, or you want to go into a CDL, truck driving, or whatever it might be, well, there's training, and it might cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 that's picked up through the DOL one-stop program. So take advantage of it. Get the training now, because now it's not just a job that help pay some of your bills, okay? But now it's a career path. And finally, the last thing I would say is financial literacy, financial literacy, financial literacy. When we're talking directly to the working poor, we've got to look at what some of our other cultures do, and ethnic groups where they pull together, they live together. You know, something's wrong, and we as leaders have to talk to our people straight on, you know, looking at their budget. You know, I just dealt with somebody the other day on it, you know, and this is a family member. You know, well, how much are you paying on your car? Well, look at the car you're driving. Why are you driving that car when you need to be putting it towards your mortgage or your rent? You know, why are you spending so much money on your hair, your fingernails, whatever it might be? And we really need to have some real hard conversation with our people. I understand why we do it, but man, we got to do some growing up, budget ourselves, live under our means, whatever that income is, get it lower, and then put the rest in savings, invest. You know, a person, I just heard this testimony where a person, a working poor, they were able to do this exact same model. They were able to save money. They cut out their smoking. They cut out the amount of lunches they go to during the daytime, bag lunch, save up enough money to put a down payment on a house. And then they put renters in there, income coming in. They did that for about 15 years. They ended up with 6 or 7 homes before they retired. And they literally retired from working class to worth over $1 million because of that simple program. Financial literacy is huge.
Interesting you say that. They actually in 1959, when I was in kindergarten, we had to put money at Howard Savings. So they started in kindergarten doing this back in the day. A lot of things they've taken out. So I want to move on. I'm looking at our time.
And I don't want to get into why they took it out, but it's strategic and
Yeah.
intentional. We need to get back to it.
I totally agree with you. So one of the things we hinted on for a hot second was regarding people who are 55 and older, and then young people. We didn't exactly hit it, so I'll ask the question. What resource programs are available to provide affordable and safe emergency housing locations and long-term housing for unhoused youth and seniors over 55? Anybody want to take that?
I mean, I'll jump in. I'll start.
Okay.
So in Bergen County, when we had Med Functional Zero for chronic and then for veterans, we turned our eyes towards young adults, 18 to 24. So our county executive made that group a priority. And so I think that's important, because when you look at research, the longer it takes you to house a younger person, you know, the more likely they're going to return to homelessness. So research is very clear about that. So I think there does need to be a sense of urgency for youth. And so I think, I'm sure Luis will talk about that in NPR about specific programs, but my point that I want to make is it's such a crucial group to look at, because we want to divert them out of homelessness. We don't want to incorporate them to get them used to being in this situation. So anything you're designing really has to be to move them to, on a better trajectory. So I think that's important. On the other end, the older population, this tends to be something I talk about a lot. And maybe because I'm in that age group, maybe it's because I see so much of it. My last week at the shelter as the director, we had a 90-year-old man that was referred for shelter. And I remember thinking to myself, what's happening out there? Because we have 90-year-olds that are coming into shelter, they're coming into homelessness for the first time. These are not people that have been homeless their whole lives. So, what I think is very important now is that we're designing housing for seniors that's not just senior housing. Our seniors, they're not ready for nursing homes. They're not that disabled. They need more than just affordable housing, right? They need to have supports, healthcare. We need to design models that better reflect the needs of our aging population. And many of them have complex care issues that make them impossible to go to shelter. And also, they don't meet the criteria for admission. And so what happens to these individuals? So in my opinion, I think that's a very important group to look at. On models that we use, we did two kind of innovative things. For people that were younger, if they had special needs too, we would do traditional kind of housing assistance, but we would involve like DDD. So we would use case management and kind of match it. We would figure out how to take affordability, but also provide the correct services. For seniors, we did things like we would have affordable housing, but we would match it with MLTSS, right, through Medicaid. So instead of going to a nursing home, people who didn't want to go, we would match that service level into housing. So the idea too is we need to be creative. We need to be innovative and creative in terms of meeting the needs of the folks that need this kind of care.
I just want to add also, because I was concerned, a lot of the housing sometimes is geared to men. So if somebody can speak to females, young females and older women, if somebody can speak to that, because that's a concern that some of the audience had. Anybody want to take that?
Let me just say this. I agree. We're a men's program. I just was reading through the comments, and we need more women programs, period. I mean, most of it is geared towards men, and I want to partner and network with others that can do more for women. So let me let the others chime in, but we absolutely need more for the women, especially and the single mothers. I mean, single mothers and single women as well. I saw a lot of the chat like that. I hear you loud and clear. We're not perfect. We're just trying to get this ball rolling. There's a long way to go, but we need more women programs right now.
Okay, well, the next question kind of ties into the end part regarding funding. So the question is, once housing is secure, and Mary, you spoke to this to some degree from your capacity, what measures are taken to ensure sustainability? And you've spoken a great deal about that with the population that you serve. But I want to hear from Luis with regard to what the city's doing, and then want to move, because we're running out of time, unfortunately. What are some of the practical steps that citizens can take to help this cause? And I have a particular question, but I'm going to let Luis jump in right here in terms of what the city is doing to ensure sustainability once people secure housing.
Yeah, just finding the house, right? Finding the apartment is the first step, right? I managed supportive housing years ago here in the city of Newark. We had close to 100 units that we manage and provided supportive services, and there's a critical transition where folks are, in need the most, where they're going from either a shelter or from an unsheltered situation to a home for the first time. That's probably where they need the most support, right? Because a lot of them are still, first of all, they some of them are probably haven't even been in an apartment for a very long time. I don't know how to kind of negotiate, right, the lease or even set up their PSEG bill, or kind of learn the rules, right, or of the or even read through your lease to make sure that you're doing all the right things. So I think critical is these housing stabilization services where you're assigned a case manager. We are, in our Path Home program, which I mentioned earlier, where the mayor has partnered with the Housing Authority and designated 200 units. Those units are tied to case management services. And we partnered actually with Bridges Outreach, who is leading the housing stabilization services there, in ensuring that folks are, we're meeting all of their needs. We're focusing not just on their apartment, but also their needs as well. And I think, to me, that is what makes these programs successful, right? Because just opening the door is the first part of it, right? I think the additional stabilization services are so important. And I think that, at the federal level, they are also, realizing this. Something that we're really are excited about is Medicaid, being approving tenancy support services, right? Especially for folks that are seniors or people with chronic health conditions. This is going to be a game changer in our community because it's really hard to find, right, the dollars to support those housing stabilization services, right, for whether you're at Section 8, you're in public housing. There's really not much support that can be provided. But now with this new waiver that's been signed, and Medicare is going to allow, as soon as I think this summer, organizations to bill Medicaid for housing stabilization services. It's going to be huge, and it's going to really cover a really enormous gap in our community. And we're really excited about that. That is going to be a new phase of this work that's going to be really critical to make sure that folks are keeping their homes and thriving as well.
Well, I can say that we need to be prepared, not being political, but everything we do, whatever we touch is political. And so Medicaid is actually on the chopping block in order to fund some sizable, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, to fund some sizable, was it $1 trillion gift to other people. I think it's the 800 billionaires, right, in this country. And so Medicaid is the big pot, which means people have to do something. We can't sit there and wait to see that this is cut because it's a big pot and everybody wants to control Medicaid. So we really need to think about that. My question to everybody, especially since we have a pretty large audience and everybody seems to be engaged, and I'm happy to see that, is the question of funding and how the people who need the funding can be helpful in the efforts to raise funding. Because a lot of times we have consultants, we have all these people who come and give us this information, but we don't necessarily ask the individuals who are going through the process to help them lead the way in terms of what it is they need. So, as a political scientist, as a, I teach government, trying to make sure that whatever information I get, people recognize what their power is. And having said that, I'm going to say people need to register to vote, but not register to vote. That's one tool in the toolbox. We need to have civics courses so people understand what their power is over elected officials. And I don't think a lot of people know. But the other thing is what can be done by the organizations that depend on the funding to help the individuals who are going to be assisted, to help them be engaged in the process, because those numbers of individuals that you're serving are really critical in terms of showing elected officials, listen, we got 100 people here, we have 1,000 people here, they're all registered to vote, they understand how government works, and they want more funding. So what can we do to help them help themselves through our situations, or the services that you provide? Luis, and then Julia, and then
Sure.
go ahead.
I mean, I think it's, it just being a part of and engaging in discussions like this, right? Like I'm reading through the chat itself, and it's just, I'm thinking of so many different things. And The folks that are actually have, have joined us are really, really like they understand the issues. And it's really inspiring to see, all right, that folks are really engaged like this. I would say first is just educate yourself, right? Educate yourself on what is available, right? Of all the different systems, right? Homelessness and housing systems. Learn about all the resources, where these resources are tied to, right? Who is providing the funding to support those resources? You really gotta, you kind of like just get in the nitty gritty of it, right? And start learning how to kind of connect all these dots. You have to learn the landscape first before you start, kind of, moving through it. So my biggest thing would be just, educate yourself, ask the questions, participate in forums like this, whether it's, virtual or community meetings. Get involved, ask questions, and really educate yourself on what's around you, so you can better advocate, not just for yourself, but for your community.
Yeah.
Are there any collaborations to ensure that the information gets out to individuals? Because as you've all said, when people are in crisis, right, that's not a priority to them. So what do we do to put the word out so that they don't have to go through a lot of changes to get the information? Because not everybody has access to Zoom. I know we think we do, but not everybody is checking out New Jersey PAC's website. So in terms of hitting the streets, right? What can we do to make sure that this information is available to people as easy as possible? And is there an effort, is anyone thinking about a collaboration between all the individuals like in the city who provide, so churches provide this, the city provides this, you have all these different groups. So what can we do to bring this together?
Well, I would say just I want to add that, the mayor created the Newark People's Assembly, which is a division within the city's administration that's responsible for spreading information, right? For keeping the community engaged. It's led by Cerinthia McElroy. You can, I don't have her information, but I'll put it in the chat once I'm available to do so. But it's a great initiative that the mayor has created, which allows residents to stay plugged into what's happening around the city, and also to participate in meetings that are held throughout the city as well. There are literally meetings probably on a weekly basis that are organized by the Newark People's Assembly. I've attended meetings as well, and it's participated and attended by Newark residents. So that is one great way to get involved and to learn about what the issues are, and also what the solutions are. And so when I get an opportunity, I will put her information in the chat, and you can definitely reach out and stay connected to what's happening in your community.
Okay. Anyone else, Julia, Mr. Khan, you want to add anything?
I've been like, I got notes like all over my paper. My gosh, this is where I get excited. So the first thing is, if you're an advocate, you need to get training. First off, as a consultant, I will not go and design anything anywhere if people have not been asked with lived experience what they need. So thank you, Linda, for bringing that up, because if I'm going to help build a shelter or design programs, I need to know what people need in that community. I need to know what specific challenges that they're having. So I think having a voice is so important, but I also think that we need to have training. Our advocates need to have good training to be able to get in front of power, right? Get in front of the right people and speak with conviction, not just passion, but conviction, right? So there's something called the Garden State Leaders, which is through the New Jersey Coalition to End Homelessness. You can find on their website. That is a fantastic training. That's something I would absolutely advocate for. I also would say we need to design what works. We know what works. We have communities all over our nation that have reached functional zero, that have improved the conditions, have helped housing, have built amazing projects. We have to do what works, not what always just feels good to us. We need to look at things that have outcomes right? That actually are effective and helping people with that goal. So I just wanted to include that too. And get involved. There are a lot of people on this call right now. I see some of my friends out there, Richard's out there, and our friends from New Jersey Coalition. If you are a leader in this space, you need to be at tables where this is being discussed.
Yes.
And I made sure when I was a director, I was at every table. I made sure I was at every table. It's exhausting. It's really difficult because as a leader, it's not just being there to do the work every day. It's being at the right places, being able to advocate for the right things, being able to represent people who don't have voices. And so you got to get out there. If something's happening even in your community, just to taking the Habitat for Humanity thing, that was happening in my hometown and I couldn't take it. I was like, I got to get in there. I got to say what I've got to say. And so I'm going to have to join this. I felt compelled to do that because I really felt very strongly about it. So getting involved, because you can be a leader where you are. Everybody can lead, right? Everybody can lead in the space that they're in. And so making sure that you don't like things that are going on, go to those council meetings, go to those, people are fighting on planning boards, go to the meeting. I've gone to numerous meetings supporting special needs housing, Habitat for Humanity, affordable housing, because I believe in that. I believe very strongly. And I think that the more of us who go out there and support that and can talk about it, it does make a difference. I think the worst thing is that we feel like we can't make a difference.
And you're absolutely right. And you can also take my political science government civics class at Essex County College. And I'll be more than happy to help you. Anyway, we're coming to the end, and pretty much you guys have kind of summarized things and brought it together. We need to kind of finish up by 8:20. So, Mr. Khan, you want to kind of share your thoughts?
I'll say in 1 minute, I agree, Linda, to get involved with your class, know your senators, know your assembly people, know who they are, talk to them. You got to speak up. Look what happened when, Trump tried taking out the teachings about the Tuskegee Airmen and the WASP, the women that were involved in service, but enough people fought back on that. So he backpedaled and put that back in and tried making some excuse on, well, I really wasn't taking it out. Yeah, you signed an executive order to take it out. I mean, that was changed because in the past 2 weeks, enough people pushed back. You have to be willing to push back. You have to fight for what's right. And I'll close with this. Dr. Martin Luther King in the letter from the Birmingham jail, the one that Dr. Clarence Jones snuck out, in that letter, he talked about the training that he put the individuals through, and they had to get used to knowing that you're going to be called such and such, you're going to be punched, you're going to be hit, you're not going to be violent. They were instructed. I think Julia talked on this, and so did you, Linda. We've got to instruct our people on how to push back, how to fight back. It's more than, I love what Julia said earlier about getting conviction. Okay, it's so, you can't just have passion. They'll see your passion, but do you have a conviction? Are you willing to get out there in the snow, hold that sign, go talk to that congressman, wait for hours at a planning board meeting, zoning board meeting, school board meeting to talk? And you think you're going to be talking in the beginning, they're going to push you all the way to the end. Then they might get to it, then they do a out of court session, and you'll sit there for another hour. You got to be willing to push through, let your voice be heard. That's what we have, and that's what will bring about a change.
Right. And we all have individual and collective power.
Yes.
We show up, people, sometimes these people who make decisions are not accustomed to people showing up. And when you do, they get a little nervous and you end up getting things that you didn't know you were going to get. So I understand Donna's giving me the note that we can take some questions. I know some of you have been trying to fold the questions into it. So is any particular question, I guess I'll start with Luis and then Julia and then you, Mr. Khan. Any particular question you want to hit like right now, based on what you see in the questions and answers? Any one in particular? I mean, I have to say the audience has been amazing, right?
Yeah.
If we could put them all on the panel, that would be good, but we don't have that opportunity and that luxury. So I want to thank the audience for their engagement and participation. It's been so lively. So anyway, All right, let's go to the questions. Anyone in particular want to take any particular questions, and then we'll
I can
circle
start
around.
and then give
Yeah.
Louis a chance to, and Amir a chance to look at the questions. I actually want to speak to the anonymous attendee who is homeless and who was talking about challenges with 211. And I know 211 is challenging because they're challenged. They're taking it for the whole state, and there's a tremendous need right now. But the person also talked about from Bergen not wanting to go to shelter. I can't press upon this more than this. The shelter in Bergen County, it's clean and it's safe, and it will get you to housing. And I encourage you to go. If you can go, I know people are afraid. People have ideas about what shelter is. That shelter is very clean and it's very safe, and it actually helps people. So I hope that you change your mind about that. And I'm telling you, someone who helped design that program, it's a wonderful program, and I hope that you do decide to make that change. And I wanted to just also end on, while I was director there, I had a woman who came in for shelter and needed a transplant. And I don't know if you guys know this, but you can't get on a transplant list if you're homeless. And I didn't know that until I was working with this individual. And I remember feeling this incredible sense of urgency to get her to housing. And we finally did. And she was so grateful. And she passed away very soon after. And I just thought to myself, if I can't change this, if I can't make a difference, that stays with me forever. I think all of us on this call have cases and real people. We're everybody on this call does this work. Every day we're doing this work. And I hope that, I wish she had come sooner. I wish we could have gotten to her sooner. So I just hope that everybody out there, if you're afraid to ask for help, that you trust a little bit and you give it a chance. A program like Amir's, a program like we had in Bergen, programs that are in Newark. We know how to help people. I hope people will take a chance. And Anonymous, I hope you make a good choice tonight.
I just want to add, Donna asked a really good question. What can we do to make the system easier for people? Because I mean, we all know people in crisis, it's got to be as easy as possible for them. Again, and Donna asked a really good question that you should be able to see. I think she put it in the Q&A, but I think that would be helpful for other people to know
Linda,
too.
let me just say this, and this is like just a great example. If you're going to apply, if something opens up statewide, you need to get on a computer. And if you don't have access to a computer, so I'll tell you, that's like the first thing I talk about is, can we get people access to a whole bunch of computers? People who work here, people who are patients here. We can help in very practical ways. I think we tend to think like really big things. And I know we have a lot of uphill work to do, but I think everyday things, by having collaborative, finding information, but even helping people get access, because how are you going to apply for housing if you don't have access and you work all day? How are you applying when that comes out? Like, I think we just have to be very practical in the ways that we think about assisting people.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
Go ahead.
go ahead, Linda. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to call on you.
Oh, okay. I was looking, I was trying to find a theme instead of like finding, one exact question. So there was a few questions about how to access services, right? And I know shelter is, probably the most critical and urgent, right, need that we have in our community. That we've done two things. One thing is that we recently launched a texting service that allows the public, community members to text when they identify someone that's in need in our community. I want to plug it because it has been really an incredible tool for us. So essentially how it works is if you're in a community here in Newark and you see somebody that's on the streets and that you believe are in need of street outreach, shelter, and other services, you text the word path home to 855-11. That alert then goes to one of our street outreach members who uses your information to locate the person and provide services. So again, it's also engaging the public, right? How do we, as a community, kind of wrap our hands around this? And that's one way that we've done it. Another way is that we've decentralized how to receive shelter services. So before, you would have to, travel here to 110 William Street. We're co-located in the health department to receive services, but we've recently changed that because we wanted to make these services as accessible as possible. So we partnered actually with 4 existing drop-in centers: Bridges Outreach, Project Connect, Better Life, the Crossroads and NJCRI, and Newark Emergency Services for Families. Those are all 4 incredible drop-in centers, and you can actually go there and they can make a direct referral now to a shelter. And that has been working really, really well for us, and has been made it easier for individuals to access those services. Those are just 2 examples that we've done.
Luis, can you put that in the chat?
Yes.
Actually, I walk around downtown Newark all the time, and so even I need the number to call,
Sure.
or I'll just walk down to City Hall. Just put in it. It's 8. You said 85111.
Yep, I'm going to put it right now. And
So I think that's a really good way to get everybody engaged.
And Linda, can I just say, someone just asked a
Sure.
quick question. I've done presentations in Essex. I've done presentations in PSEG. Lewis is working really hard, in Newark. We share, whenever I'm invited, if anybody asks me, I'll come out and do a presentation. I think, we have to support the efforts that are out there. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of really good agencies that are on the call. I know I recognize a few people that are on here and doing that work. So just, keep out that. I don't know. Do you want to
Yeah.
ask Amir before we?
Yeah, I did. And we were going to tie it up. Amir, you have like 30 seconds, but I know
All
you can
right.
do it.
I can tell you that a lot of times when you look at situations, somebody asks the question, and why can't we make it easier? I think in some cases it's set up not to be easy because there's a lot of money for organizations to make when people are dysfunctional, and we have to understand that. And when you understand that, don't get discouraged. That scripture in the Bible when it talks about ask and it shall be given, knock and the door shall be open, seek and you shall find. The true translation is ask, keep on asking, knock, keep on knocking, seek, keep on seeking. Don't get discouraged. You're going to get discouraged. I promise you will get discouraged, but pick yourself back up. When you have a setback, don't take a step back. It's only a setup for a comeback. You got to keep on going strong, because if you keep knocking, eventually that door will open. Don't be discouraged by a system that can possibly be set up to cause failure in your life. Keep on pushing, and you're going to make it.
Okay, well, are there any numbers, anything you want to put in the chat? People are asking for them. They're really interested. And we have come to the end. I think this is very engaging. Again, this has been one of the, and I've been doing this for a minute, so it's really nice to see the engagement from the audience. This is though we need more space so we can put them on the Zoom and see everybody's faces when they're talking to us. But we really appreciate the audience, because it really not that we don't have experts on the panel, but the audience came in with their part, and I thought that was very, very helpful. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Donna. Are you around? And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all the panelists, Luis and Julia and Amir. You guys have been great to work with, and so has the audience been.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Thank you so much, Linda. I agree. This was a real partnership. The audience actually were just feeding not just the questions, but the comments. So it created a real energy of seeking knowledge, seeking information, which is the whole purpose of Standing in Solidarity. So tonight you really demonstrated why we created this program 5 years ago, right on the heels of the murder of George Floyd. And it was exactly to do this, and that is to provide information to our communities so that we can thrive. So I thank each and every one of you for your participation. We have these every month. So next month, we will be talking about maternal mortality, and this will be in person. It will be in person at NJPAC at 6 p.m. We will screen the film first, and then we will have a panel discussion talking about the crisis of Black maternal health. Our panelists include Marley Massima, Micheline Davis, Michelle Gabrielle Caldwell, and Dr. Natasha Harris. So it is going to be a very dynamic conversation, and we invite you all to come. It's free, and we welcome you at NJPAC. And if you would like to see some other kinds of events we have, when you go to our website, of course, you can see everything, but we've got another program coming up on February 27th called Dear America, a Letter from Black Women. We have the great city of Newark Jazz and Blues All-Stars, Bethany Jazz Vespers on March 1st. We're having an incredible wellness fair on April 2nd, where you can learn about how to take better care of yourself from head to toe. And of course, Alvin Ailey returns, as they do every year, for Mother's Day weekend, May 9th and 11th. So we look forward to seeing you at any and all of these events. We so appreciate your attention and your participation. Thank you so much, panel. You were fantastic. Have a
Yeah.
great night, everyone. Thank you.
God bless
Bye.
you. Bye-bye
Take care,
now.
everyone.